The war chamber of the Coalition was carved into the core of an ancient station orbiting a dying blue star. It had witnessed centuries of conquest, victories that reshaped entire regions of the galaxy. Around the chamber's circular tables sat representatives of the most powerful species ever assembled under one banner. Their fleets had crushed empires older than most stars in the sky. Entire civilizations had fallen within days once the Coalition decided they were a target. Expansion was not debated here. It was scheduled. Above the council table floated a massive holographic star map. Thousands of systems glowed in different colors, each one representing territory claimed by the Coalition or civilizations soon to be conquered. Strategic discussions moved quickly. Targets were reviewed, approved, and assigned to invasion fleets with almost mechanical efficiency. A small yellow star appeared near the edge of the projection. Sol. Around it orbited a handful of planets. Only one showed signs of intelligent life. Earth. The council analysts delivered their summary. The species called themselves humans. Their civilization had only recently mastered faster-than-light travel. Their fleets were small. Their technology lagged centuries behind Coalition standards. Their military strength was insignificant compared to the armadas already assembled. Several council members barely reacted. To them, humanity looked like a routine expansion. A younger commander leaned forward, his voice calm but confident as he studied the star map. Minimal defenses. Limited colonies. Industrial capacity still developing. A single strike fleet should be sufficient. Another council member nodded. The system sits along an unclaimed trade corridor. Securing it would stabilize our border routes. A third voice added coldly. The species will be absorbed within weeks. The discussion continued for several minutes. Supply projections were calculated. Fleet routes were planned. Even the timeline for annexation was being drafted. To the council, the decision was already made. Then a single voice interrupted. Do not attack the humans. The chamber fell silent. The speaker was not a young strategist, or an eager admiral seeking glory. The voice came from the oldest officer in the room. Commander Drex had served the Coalition longer than most members of the council had been alive. His fleet had led dozens of successful campaigns across the galaxy. He rarely spoke during planning sessions. But when he did, the council listened. Dozens of eyes turned toward him. The young commander who had proposed the invasion frowned slightly. Commander Drex, are you suggesting we avoid the system entirely? Yes. The response came without hesitation. A ripple of confusion spread across the chamber. One council member tilted his head. This species is barely interstellar. Another added. They possess no alliances. No advanced defenses. No significant fleet. The young strategist gestured toward the holographic display. Commander, we have conquered civilizations thousands of years more advanced than these humans. Drex looked up at the star map. His gaze rested on the small yellow star. Humans are different. The room waited for an explanation. None came immediately. The young strategist leaned back slightly. Different how? Drex slowly folded his hands in front of him. Centuries ago, he said quietly, a Coalition patrol encountered a human vessel traveling between star systems. Several council members exchanged curious glances. The commander continued. It was a colony ship. The holographic display shifted slightly as historical records were pulled from the Coalition archives. A small human vessel appeared in the projection, primitive by modern standards, its engines crude compared to current designs. It carried thousands of civilians. Families. Engineers. Scientists. They were establishing one of their first off-world colonies. A council member shrugged. That is irrelevant. Early expansion attempts are always vulnerable. Yes, Drex said. They are. He paused. The patrol destroyed the ship. No one in the room reacted strongly. For the Coalition, such encounters were routine. Young civilizations frequently wandered into territories they did not understand. Patrol fleets often eliminated unknown vessels before they could become threats. The young strategist tapped the table lightly. A standard engagement. What significance does it hold now? Therex's voice remained calm. The patrol did not open communication. They did not issue a warning. They did not even identify the vessel. The holographic projection zoomed in on the human colony ship. It was destroyed without a single message exchanged. Another council member spoke. That is still irrelevant. The ship entered coalition territory. Correct. The Rex nodded slightly. And to us, it was nothing more than a minor incident. He looked around the chamber slowly. But to the humans, his voice lowered. It was something else entirely. The star map changed again. This time it displayed Earth itself, along with several early human colonies scattered across nearby systems. When the colony ship failed to arrive at its destination, the humans began searching. The projection showed dozens of small human vessels spreading across space. Exploration craft. Scientific probes. Rescue ships. They recovered fragments of debris. They traced the attack. They studied the weapon signatures. The chamber remained silent. The Rex continued. They identified the patrol fleet responsible. A council analyst quickly scanned the records. Yes, the analyst said after a moment. A small patrol group from the 4th Expansion Fleet. He paused. The incident was logged and archived. No follow-up actions were required. The Rex nodded once. That is correct. To the Coalition, the matter had ended there. But the commander's eyes remained fixed on the projection. The humans did not see it that way. The young strategist crossed his arms. What did they do? Protest? Attempt diplomacy? The Rex shook his head slowly. No. They recorded it. Several council members looked confused. Recorded? One repeated. Yes. The Rex gestured toward the display. New information appeared on the projection. Lines of human data files, surveillance reports, intercepted communications. They gathered every piece of information related to the attack. Every sensor record. Every energy signature. Every fragment of debris. They reconstructed the entire encounter. The young strategist frowned. That is simply investigation. Yes. The Rex agreed. But it did not stop there. The display shifted again. Now it showed the patrol ships responsible for the attack. Each vessel was highlighted individually. The humans identified every ship involved. Every officer. Every commander. A quiet tension began forming in the chamber. They documented them all. The strategist leaned forward slightly. And then? Therex's voice remained steady. Then they waited. No one spoke. For decades, he continued, the humans did nothing. They expanded their colonies. They improved their technology. They studied the galaxy. To outside observers, it appeared they had accepted the loss. The young strategist nodded slowly. A rational response for a weak species. Therex looked directly at him. Yes. That is what everyone believed. He turned back toward the star map. But something began happening many years later. The projection flickered. A patrol ship appeared in the hologram. Then the ship suddenly disappeared from the display. Ship 412, Therex said quietly. It vanished during a routine transit between systems. The analyst checked the records. Yes. The incident was logged as a navigational malfunction. Another ship appeared. Then vanished. Ship 416. The analyst spoke again. Destroyed by an asteroid collision, according to the report. A third ship appeared. Then disappeared. The chamber was no longer completely comfortable. These incidents were separated by years, Therex explained. No clear pattern. No confirmed attackers. The projection displayed more missing ships. One by one. Investigators blamed mechanical failure. Pirates. Navigation errors. The young strategist frowned. What does this have to do with humans? Therex did not answer immediately. Instead, he slowly expanded the holographic display. Now the vanished ships formed a list. Every vessel from the original patrol fleet. Every ship involved in the destruction of the human colony vessel. The strategist stared at the display. Realization began forming. The Rex spoke softly. Humans did not forget. His eyes moved across the room. They simply waited. The chamber remained silent. And then the commander delivered the final warning. Humans do not react like other species. They do not forgive attacks. They do not abandon debts. His voice dropped to a quiet certainty. They hunt. The council chamber remained silent after the commander's final words. For a moment, no one spoke. The star map still hovered above the table, the Sol system glowing quietly near the outer edge of Coalition space. To most of the council it looked small, insignificant, almost irrelevant compared to the massive empires surrounding it. But the tension in the room had changed. The younger strategist broke the silence first. You are suggesting that a developing species secretly destroyed multiple Coalition patrol ships over several decades? His tone carried skepticism rather than fear. That would require capabilities they did not possess. Commander the Rex did not argue immediately. Instead, he motioned toward the projection. The display shifted again. Now the council saw something unfamiliar: human records. Files recovered through intelligence intercepts and long-range observation. The information had been quietly collected over many years by Coalition analysts who never realized its true importance. At the center of the display appeared a simple human document. It had a name. The Ledger. This, Brex said calmly, is what the humans created after their colony ship was destroyed. The document expanded into a long list of entries. Each line contained a name, a ship, a commander, a location. The strategist leaned closer, studying the data. This is a military record. No, Brex replied. It is a memory. The humans had not simply investigated the attack. They had built a permanent archive of it. Every fragment of sensor data had been preserved. Every signature from Coalition weapon systems had been analyzed. The exact composition of the attacking fleet had been reconstructed with disturbing accuracy. The patrol vessels responsible for destroying the colony ship were all listed. So were their commanders. Even the support ships operating nearby at the time had been included. Nothing had been ignored. Nothing had been erased. The council analyst spoke slowly while scanning the records. The accuracy is impressive. It is precise, the Rex corrected. The strategist looked unimpressed. Many species track historical conflicts. Yes, the Rex said. But humans do something different. The display changed again. Now it showed the expansion of human space over the next century. New colonies appeared across nearby star systems. Industrial networks formed around asteroid belts. Scientific stations were established in remote regions of space. The speed of their development was unusual. They grew quickly, the strategist admitted. Not quickly, the Rex said. Deliberately. Human scientists began studying fragments of alien technology recovered through trade, observation, and salvage debris. They reverse-engineered propulsion systems. They redesigned their shipyards. They improved their weapons in small but consistent ways. They were not trying to surpass the Coalition. They were trying to understand it. Human exploration fleets traveled further into space each decade. Their probes quietly mapped nearby territories. Their navigational algorithms improved constantly. All the while, the ledger continued to grow. Every name remained. Every ship remained. Every detail remained. Still, the strategist said, this does not prove they destroyed the patrol fleet. No, the Rex agreed. It proves something more dangerous. The display shifted again. A patrol vessel appeared on the hologram. The same one that had vanished decades earlier. This ship disappeared during routine travel. The analyst confirmed it again. No distress signal. No wreckage recovered. The projection zoomed outward. Human vessels appeared in nearby star systems during the same period. Small ships, exploration craft, mining vessels, scientific expeditions. None of them appeared threatening. But their movement patterns overlapped with coalition patrol routes more often than analysts had originally noticed. Then another vanished patrol ship appeared, followed by another, and another. The strategist watched the pattern slowly form across the projection. The disappearances were scattered across time, but they followed a consistent rule. Every missing ship appeared on the ledger. None of the others vanished. The analyst spoke quietly. All vessels involved in the colony ship incident were eventually lost. Yes, the Rex said. Every one. The strategist leaned back slightly. That still does not confirm human involvement. No, the Rex said again. It confirms human patience. He enlarged the display further. The ledger remained visible beside the missing ships. For over a century, the list had remained unchanged. One name after another had eventually been removed. Not erased. Marked. The human notation system showed a single word beside each entry. Resolved. The strategist studied the final entry still visible on the list. A commander of the original patrol fleet. His ship had vanished only 12 years earlier. The Rex looked at the council. Humans do not rush into war. They study. They plan. They remember. The strategist's skepticism was beginning to fade. But if they were capable of this, he asked slowly, why did they never confront the coalition openly? The Rex answered immediately. Because they were not ready. The star map shifted again. Human territory had expanded far beyond its original borders. Their ship production had increased dramatically. New ship designs appeared in their fleets every decade. They were improving constantly. Not loudly, but relentlessly. They were learning how we move, the Rex continued. How we fight. How we think. The strategist finally asked the question forming in everyone's mind. And once they finished learning? The Rex looked back at the small yellow star on the map. His voice remained steady. Then they began hunting. The council did not change its decision. Commander Therex's warning was recorded, discussed briefly, and then dismissed. The logic seemed simple to the strategists leading the coalition. Even if humans had eliminated a few isolated patrol ships over a long period of time, it did not change the balance of power. The coalition commanded thousands of warships and controlled hundreds of star systems. Humanity possessed only a handful of colonies and a developing fleet. The vote to invade passed easily. Within weeks, the invasion armada assembled along the outer edges of human space. Massive carriers, battlecruisers, and escort destroyers formed one of the largest fleets the coalition had deployed in decades. The operation was designed to be swift. A decisive strike would eliminate humanity's ability to resist before the species could fully mobilize. The fleet entered the Sol system without hesitation. Human defense forces met them immediately. Compared to coalition warships, the human vessels looked smaller and less refined. Their designs were compact, built more for speed and adaptability than overwhelming power. Yet the humans did not scatter when the armada arrived. Their fleets formed defensive lines around orbital stations and planetary defenses. For several hours the system burned with combat. Human ships fought aggressively, launching coordinated attacks and using unconventional maneuvering tactics that surprised several coalition commanders. Smaller human craft weaved through heavier warships, targeting vulnerable points and forcing the invasion fleet to divide its fire. But numbers eventually decided the outcome. Coalition carriers deployed wave after wave of strike craft. Heavy cruisers pounded defensive stations into fragments. One by one, the outer human fleets were forced to withdraw toward deeper positions within the system. Several human colonies were quickly surrounded. Coalition ground forces captured orbital infrastructure and established military outposts around strategic planets. Supply routes were secured, and defensive platforms were installed along key jump corridors. Within days, coalition analysts declared the operation successful. Human forces had retreated from several sectors. Their fleet had taken heavy losses. Their expansion routes were now under Coalition control. To the Council, the campaign appeared to be progressing exactly as expected. But Commander Rex remained uneasy. Reports arriving from the Sol system contained details that bothered him. Human commanders had not attempted reckless counterattacks. They had not begged for negotiations or attempted desperate last stands. Instead, their fleets withdrew in an organized pattern, abandoning territory without attempting to defend every position. The behavior looked almost deliberate. Several months passed. Coalition occupation forces strengthened their presence in human space. New military stations were constructed along the border systems. Patrol fleets monitored human ship movements and reported occasional skirmishes, but nothing large enough to threaten the occupation. Then the first supply convoy vanished. It was a routine shipment traveling from a coalition industrial system to a forward base near human territory. The convoy consisted of cargo carriers escorted by 2 destroyers. Halfway through its journey, the convoy simply stopped transmitting. Search vessels were dispatched immediately. They found nothing. No debris. No emergency signals. No signs of combat. The loss was written off as a navigation failure. But weeks later another convoy disappeared. Then a patrol group failed to report back from a border system. Then an entire reconnaissance squadron vanished while surveying an asteroid field. Coalition analysts began noticing something unusual. These incidents were not occurring within human territory. They were happening across distant regions of Coalition space. Thousands of light years away from Earth. Commander Rex studied the reports carefully. The pattern was painfully familiar. He began tracing the identities of the lost ships. Supply captains. Patrol officers. Recon commanders. One by one he cross-referenced their names with older Coalition archives. The results confirmed his fear. Every individual connected to the vanished ships had appeared somewhere in the records of the original colony ship incident. Some had served in the patrol fleet. Others had been officers assigned to nearby sectors during the attack. Even a logistics commander responsible for supporting the patrol fleet had disappeared. The pattern was unmistakable. Humanity had begun expanding the hunt. At first, the Coalition believed the attacks were small-scale sabotage operations carried out by human resistance groups. That explanation collapsed quickly once deeper investigations began. Several of the missing ships had vanished in systems believed to be completely secure. Some were protected by heavily armed stations. Others were operating far beyond human territory. One report described an entire patrol fleet losing contact during a routine hyperspace jump. When search teams arrived at their destination, they discovered only fragments drifting through space. The damage pattern suggested precision strikes delivered within seconds of their arrival. Another investigation uncovered a destroyed supply depot orbiting a gas giant. The facility's defense grid had been disabled moments before the attack. Surveillance footage showed several unfamiliar ships entering the system briefly before disappearing again. The ships were human. Coalition commanders began asking the same question. How were human forces reaching systems so far from their own territory? How were they locating specific ships and officers across such vast distances? Commander Rex already understood the answer. Humans had been studying Coalition movement patterns for generations. They knew the major trade corridors, the standard patrol routes, and the predictable schedules of military deployments. They had spent decades mapping the Coalition long before the invasion began. The occupation of human space had not weakened them. It had simply given them new targets. Coalition supply networks started collapsing one system at a time. Fuel depots exploded without warning. Communications relays failed across several sectors. Patrol fleets reported ambushes in regions that had been considered completely secure. Human strike teams appeared suddenly, attacked with brutal efficiency, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. The attacks were never random. Every target had a name. And every name had been written in the ledger centuries earlier. The Coalition had believed the war began when their fleets entered the Sol system. Commander Rex knew the truth. For the humans, the war had started long ago. And now they were finishing it. Years passed after the invasion of human space, and the Coalition slowly realized the war was no longer unfolding the way they understood wars. Their fleets were still larger. Their territory was still vast. On paper, the Coalition remained the dominant power of the galaxy. But control of territory meant very little when ships kept disappearing. The attacks did not come as massive battles between armadas. No giant human fleets arrived to challenge Coalition forces directly. Instead, the incidents appeared as precise fractures spreading through the Coalition structure. A shipyard orbiting a distant industrial world suddenly lost power for 4 minutes. When the emergency systems restarted, 3 capital warships under construction had been destroyed from within. Security records showed a single unidentified vessel entering the system hours earlier and leaving before the alarms triggered. A convoy transporting antimatter fuel vanished inside a protected trade corridor guarded by 3 patrol groups. The escorts reported nothing unusual until the moment the convoy disappeared from their sensors. Search teams later discovered wreckage scattered across several million kilometers of space, as if the ships had been dismantled piece by piece. A military command station near the Coalition border lost communication with its patrol fleets for less than 20 seconds. When the signal returned, 4 cruisers assigned to the sector had already been destroyed. Each event appeared isolated. But they continued happening. Again. And again. Coalition commanders quickly learned something even more unsettling. The attacks were not focused on territory. Human forces were not trying to occupy worlds or expand their borders. They were targeting individuals. Admirals responsible for the original patrol fleet began disappearing. Some vanished while traveling between star systems. Others were killed when their ships were ambushed by human vessels that appeared without warning and vanished just as quickly. Retired officers were not safe either. Several former commanders who had participated in the colony ship incident were living on distant Coalition worlds, far from any battlefield. They had left military service decades earlier. Some had become administrators or advisors. Others had withdrawn from public life entirely. One by one, they disappeared. A transport carrying a retired fleet officer suffered a sudden navigation failure while crossing a quiet region of space. The wreckage was never found. Another officer was killed when the orbital platform he was visiting exploded after a brief power failure in the station's defense grid. A third vanished from a heavily guarded diplomatic world. Security recordings showed a human infiltration team moving through the facility with silent efficiency before disappearing into a stealth vessel waiting beyond the planet's atmosphere. The pattern slowly became impossible to ignore. Every victim shared the same connection. They were all listed in the ancient Coalition records describing the destruction of the human colony ship. Every single one. Coalition intelligence divisions began searching desperately for a way to predict the next attack. They increased patrol routes, fortified shipyards, and expanded security protocols across hundreds of systems. None of it stopped the disappearances. Human strike teams moved through the galaxy with terrifying precision. Their ships were fast, difficult to detect, and often operated alone or in small groups. They did not linger after an attack. They struck, completed their objective, and vanished into deep space before any response could reach them. They showed no interest in conquering worlds. They showed no interest in negotiating peace. They did not broadcast threats or demands. They simply continued the hunt. Years after the invasion of Earth, Coalition strategists finally began studying the human ledger that Commander Thrax had shown the Council long ago. The document was recovered through intercepted transmissions and fragments of human data networks. At first it looked like nothing more than a historical archive. But the pattern became obvious once the names were compared with Coalition casualty reports. Every target that vanished matched an entry in the ledger. The humans were not choosing victims randomly. They were completing a list. One name at a time. When the Council finally realized the scale of what was happening, panic spread quietly through the highest levels of Coalition command. The ledger contained far more names than they had expected. Not just the patrol ships. Not just the commanders who ordered the attack. Even support officers who had participated indirectly were recorded. Supply coordinators. weapons technicians, navigation officers. Anyone who had played a role in the destruction of the colony's ship had been written into the record. And the humans were still hunting them. The attacks continued for decades. One by one, the names on the ledger disappeared from Coalition records. The galaxy began to understand a new truth about humanity. Humans did not forget losses the way other species did. They did not allow time to erase a conflict. They carried memory across generations. Their children inherited the same records. Their grandchildren inherited the same names. The mission remained unchanged. Finish the ledger. The final entry belonged to the commander who had led the patrol fleet centuries earlier. He had risen through Coalition ranks over the years and eventually retired to a secure world deep within Coalition territory. His residence was surrounded by automated defenses and guarded by military forces. For decades, nothing threatened him. Until the night a small unidentified vessel entered the system without triggering any alarms. The defense grid shut down for 9 seconds. When power returned, the commander was gone. No bodies. No wreckage. No trace. After that event, the disappearances stopped. Coalition analysts watched the galaxy for months, expecting another wave of attacks. None came. Human fleets withdrew gradually from distant systems and returned to the borders of their own territory. They did not attempt to seize Coalition worlds. They did not demand reparations or surrender. They simply ended the hunt. Commander the Rex watched the final reports arrive in silence. The war that had terrified the Coalition for decades had ended without a treaty, without negotiations, without a final battle. The humans had accomplished exactly what they set out to do. Nothing more. Nothing less. The Council finally understood the warning he had given long ago. Humans were not the strongest species in the galaxy. They were not the most advanced. But they possessed something far more dangerous. They remembered every enemy. And once a human decided you owed a debt, they would cross any distance in the universe to collect it. Commander Threx looked once more at the small yellow star on the edge of Coalition space. Then he repeated the words no one in the galaxy would ever ignore again. Never attack humans. Because they will not forget. And they will hunt you across the stars.